Hello, I'm Eric Odell with CA's Continuous Testing Live, and I'm here with my friend Alex Martins, who's CA's Continuous Testing Evangelist. Thank you for joining me today, Alex.
Glad to be here.
Yes. So hey, we've been talking all day to other members of our team about Gartner's Magic Quadrant and also their Critical Capabilities report about software testing automation. You know, now, continuous testing has been around for almost a decade, but you know, finally, the Magic Quadrant and also the Critical Capabilities report is suddenly focusing on continuous testing. So why has continuous testing suddenly come out of nowhere?
Right. Well, I think there has been a lot of changes in the market, right? In the way our customers are trying to get to continuous integration and then continuous deployment, continuous release, to eventually get to continuous delivery. A lot goes into that journey, and the main thing is that some of them that have already achieved the speed that everybody wants to release to their users, what they realize is that they are able to release, but there's no quality. The quality they expect and the user expect is not there. So then they're going back to identifying why is that happening, and they realize that testing has always been the problem or something that they have overlooked. So now everybody's talking about continuous testing, even the analysts, because it is the #1 problem that everybody's trying to tackle is how do I, in that world of continuous everything, how do I continuously test from the beginning all the way as I try to shift left? How do I start injecting the tests across my pipeline so that yes, I can release with speed, but also with quality? That's what's been going on.
Well, you know, one of the striking things about both the Magic Quadrant and the Critical Capabilities report, when you think about software testing automation, is that a lot of the organizations that used to be considered the leaders, either they were in the leader quadrant or the visionary quadrant, somehow have just been swept over to like the challengers section, and those that were in the Critical Capabilities report as leaders in different use cases suddenly are a lot lower. What do you attribute this to?
Well, just like the customers in any enterprise have been trying to adapt to the new reality of our world, the vendors have also been trying to do the same, some of them more successfully than others. So while the use cases have also changed for the analysts because of all that transformation, the vendors are trying to keep up. And some vendors have been doing a better job at keeping up with the market and even trying to anticipate the market reactions. And that's why you see some vendors that are more traditional kind of not appearing or not ranking so well, and others that are better at adapting to the changes.
All right, now you're dealing with an awful lot of organizations who are, working on their digital transformation. So why has testing become a priority in this digital transformation?
Right, because as part of any digital transformation initiative, the customer is at the center of everything, right? Everything that the organization's business and IT are trying to do as they transform is about the customer. And as part of that, obviously, quality is at the front and center for the customer. But the problem is quality is something different to the IT organization and the business organization and the end users. There's different aspects of quality that we've always looked at, such as the functional quality, the non-functional aspects of quality, and when you bring the user into that equation, even though something might be working, it might not be perceived as what the actual user wanted, or they might not perceive the quality that the business intended. Right. So there's this new dimension that now is front and center, and it wasn't before, and now everybody's trying to see how do I live in this world and help the enterprises go through that journey.
Now we've already been deep diving into continuous testing, but there are a whole lot of different definitions that are out there. So what exactly is continuous testing? How would you define that?
It continues to evolve, even for myself, but the way I like to think is we have to be able to build quality into everything we do. Right? So for us to be able to build quality, there are different aspects that we have to pay attention to as we develop the code, as we build the code, as we deploy the code, and also as we test the code. Right. We cannot continue thinking about testing as something I do at a certain point in time. I have to do that in real time as I'm writing the code, as I'm building it, as I'm deploying it. So my definition is really we have to inject testing in every single activity across the SDLC. Okay. In my pipeline in an automated fashion, so that when I get to the end of that cycle, just before I release to my users, I'm not concerned that something is going to break. I've already, anticipated and prevented the problems from going across my environments in my life cycle. So it's really the ability to continuously test, shift all the way to the left with that build quality in mindset, so that you tackle the problems as they happen, and not something that you do at a certain point in time, but you do it all the time.
Right. Okay, so I've heard a lot of statements like, continuous testing is the missing link to DevOps and continuous delivery. Why is that?
So that's an interesting point, because as I mentioned earlier, what's been happening is a lot of companies, and there's a lot of research in the industry as well, a lot of companies have been able to achieve continuous delivery, which is not easy. It's not an easy feat. And but when they realize that I am releasing faster, but I'm not getting the business value that we all wanted, that we invested so much to get to. So continuous testing is really bringing that ability to realize the business value and for you to measure the business value across the SDLC, but also as the users are using it, and then you are basically taking all that feedback and the lessons learned, applying it back into your backlog and going at it again. So that's why it's the missing link. It's really making the connection between the original business value that was intended and making sure that the users get that business value.
So we talked about continuous testing, like it's been around for almost a decade, but yet we see that it's taken this long for Gartner to even establish it as a key use case in its critical capabilities. Are you finding that it's taking organizations a little while to really adopt this?
It is, and actually I have one slide that I like to use a lot. If you think about how all the disciplines across the SDLC have changed, so development has basically changed and improved a lot on the way they developed, the way you build code, the way you deploy code, the way even you do business analysis. So all the capabilities have changed that support the SDLC, but testing hasn't fundamentally changed. We're still having to go through all of these steps here in blue, for you to create the test cases, identify the test data that you need for running those test cases, any interfaces. So in all of these activities, these testing activities are manual in nature, even today. So what's been happening is most organizations are trying to fit all of this manual intensive, manually heavy activities fit into an agile world, fit into a continuous delivery mindset. And that does not work. We're seeing this. And so that's why we see a lot of focus now on trying to solve that problem, is how do I do testing given here's how I've always done it. How do I do testing now that is supporting this new world? And really, if you try to do all of that manually, it's very hard for you to achieve it. So one of the things that we're seeing the early adopters do and be successful in their experiments, and the ones that have experimented a while ago and gotten there are seeing the benefits already, is they have invested in automating these testing-related activities in a way that you are removing manual intervention, manual creation of testing assets, like we've always done in the past, right? So that's fundamentally changing. That's why everybody is paying attention, and that includes automatic creation of tests. You're not talking about just automating the execution, but automatically generating the tests for you that are relevant, automatically instantiating environments, automatically generating data in real time, on demand. All of those activities that used to be manual intensive are being automated now in order to support the speed that everybody needs, and then ultimately for the user to realize the value that we all want.
Okay, so when we say continuous testing, what kind of testing are we talking about?
Yes, that's a very common misconception, because when people think about testing and then continuous testing, they always think about running automated functional tests, right? So is it working or is it not working? But those organizations that have been doing this for a while have realized that they have to also take care of the non-functional aspects of the system early on, right? So that continuous testing mindset, starting at the unit level and then component integration, then system integration, all of that testing has to be continuously executed in order to find functional and non-functional defects. So things like performance testing, you can do performance, and you should do performance testing early on at the unit level, component integration, same thing for security, and so on. The reason for that is, although we did talk about that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but we never did because it was expensive. Today, technology has changed, and we're able to achieve that, to run functional and performance and security and other types of testing early on in a way that's sustainable, in a way that we can actually automatically generate the tests at the developer level by the developer, and then you start bundling those up as you go further to the right in the life cycle, and then ultimately you are preventing problems from getting into the other environments as well.
All right, so would you agree with this, that, okay, so you've got testing automation. Does that necessarily mean that you have continuous testing?
No, not at all, because test automation has been around 20, 25 years, maybe even more. I know of it for 25 years. But the thing is, and we never called it continuous testing because there was always a point in time where somebody had to automatically kick off an execution, or you had a scheduler, and it would just run in that one moment in time. And then maybe tomorrow again, and tomorrow, but didn't run continuously. Technology didn't allow us to do that. We needed to babysit those scripts and so on. So continuous testing involves the automated execution of tests for sure, but there's a lot more that it's about, like I said earlier, embedding quality into the life cycle, and that includes not just continuously testing the application code, but you have to test your deployment process, your build process, your check-in process, all of those different disciplines. It's not just about the application testing, it's about the entire SDLC testing. All of those disciplines together compose a continuous testing environment, and that's really something new that everybody's trying to figure out how to achieve it.
All right, so I'm sure you work with a lot of organizations on their continuous testing journey. So what are they doing to overcome some of the continuous testing challenges that they face?
Right, the main challenge that we see is really around culture, right? As we always hear about any transformation, change, right? Change is really hard. And especially about testing, as I mentioned, testing hasn't really changed fundamentally. Everybody has always put pressure in testing. It was always the bottleneck, and everybody saw it as something that's going to slow us down. So with that mindset, how do we actually talk to the testing team and help them understand their new role in supporting this continuous world? That's the main challenge that organizations are facing today, and it's not an easy challenge to tackle, but it is possible. We have many examples. The analysts are validating those examples and bringing credibility. And the ones that have invested on that cultural transformation have succeeded. They are achieving the business value that they couldn't achieve before.
Alex, thank you very much for joining us here on Continuous Testing Live. And thank you very much for your insights on the continuous testing journey. And thank you for joining us on Continuous Testing Live.